I think that some of what intactivists are doing is kind of doing harm to the movement. And I think that is when communication styles are not really thought about, and you're not catering the message to the person and trying to deliver it in a way that they'll receive. There's quite a bit of that turns people away from even looking at the topic because they feel so attacked by it. So that, I would say, is not even real intactivism. And that might make some people angry. Because if the purpose of intactivism is to...
Hello, intactivists. Today I'm here with Melina, Ylinen. Go ahead, tell us your story.
Hi. So first of all, I'm really excited to be on POTS. I love your channel. I think you bring up some really great stuff and get communication going on in the intactivist movement. And I think that's great. So thank you for letting me come on. I'll start by telling you who I am. I am Melina, and I'm a mom first. I have 6 little kids, and I have 1 grandchild. So I'm a mom first before all other things. My background, I have a master's degree in communication, and that led me to I became a life coach. I've been doing life coaching for about 10 years, just helping people whatever stage they're at in life to kind of just get through life and whatnot. And I'm also a financial professional. I help people protect and grow their money. And I really just enjoy helping people wherever they're at in life. And my other career I don't get paid for, that I would say is just as important, is that I am an intactivist. And I'm probably the most passionate about that because my story is I'm a regret mom. I came into the understanding of circumcision in what I would say is the worst way, which is experiencing it firsthand on your child after very little understanding, very little information was given. At the time, I was a single mom. I was 25, and I really thought I was doing my due diligence by talking to my doctor, and I believed everything my doctor told me. Looking back, the questions I asked were very inadequate, very naive, and the answers that I got were very stereotypical, what I would consider false narrative now on the topic. The story is that, well, it's not just my story, it's my family's story. My firstborn son is a victim of circumcision because I did not have the information at the time. And that really did a lot of damage to myself as well as my son. It really messed with me. I don't know how anyone could see that done to a baby and with their right mind intact, not realize that it was what it was. It's a horrible thing. I don't know how anyone can see that done and just kind of walk on by and think that it's nothing. But actually, I'll say the only way that can happen is severe cognitive dissonance. And that's really the only way you can witness something like that and not see it for what it is. So I think part of my journey in seeking forgiveness for myself is being an active part in the movement now to help reduce children that could have suffered, that will suffer from it if their parents don't get the information, families and moms who will suffer as well from not having the information. So it was part of my journey to overcome what happened, to heal from it, and to feel like this can't have been for no reason. In the most hopeless despair of it all, I, with my heart, pleaded, this can't have been in vain. And I think that's really where regret parents can have a powerful voice in this movement. If they're willing to be vulnerable and share their story, you have to be able to admit that you made a mistake. And that's a really hard thing to do. So I think communication about it is really, really important. And I could go on later about the right kind of communication that I think I do have some advice for the intactivist communities about how we can best approach these topics with families to have more of a reach and a better success rate. But primarily, I think communication is being willing to talk about it, even though it's taboo, and being willing to hear the other person's side is really important. Even when the person might be wrong about the information that they think they're bringing to the table, it's really important for that person to be heard and to hear sort of like between the lines. So if a mother says to me she had her son circumcised because she was told it was cleaner or she believed it was cleaner, you have to realize that that mother truly believes that information, and she thought she was preventing her son from, it might not be real, but she believed she was protecting him from a life of difficulty. So you really want to reach the parent from that perspective of, hey, I can see that you're a caring parent that was very concerned about, your child being healthy and having good hygiene and having the best quality of life. So from that angle approaching, I think you would be more than adequate parent to be able to teach your child hygiene and teach them how to clean themselves appropriately, because you're someone who is already worried about that and concerned about that. So I think that you're capable of being able to handle that. So addressing their concern rather than just telling them that they're wrong. Like, you are right to care about your child's hygiene. What if I told you that there's another way that you could do that that doesn't require cutting your child? So I think it's about not necessarily coming at the parent like they're wrong, because that shuts people down. And this movement needs to be about helping the person you're communicating with receive the information so that they don't just completely shut down. It reminds me of, in the financial industry, there's a statistic, and we talk about it all the time, that when somebody gets help from a financial professional for their first time, if they have a negative experience, statistically, they will never seek out that professional help ever again. So as a financial advisor, you have a responsibility to ensure that your first impression with that person is as positive as it can be, because your mission is to help empower that person and teach that person, help them grow. They can't do that if they feel shut down, and statistically, they're not likely to get help from you or anyone else if it doesn't go well. I see it being very similar in intactivism. You have one chance. You might be the first person who's ever talked to them about circumcision before, and you might be the last. So that is a very powerful place to be, where if that person's even giving you the chance, like giving you the in, you've got to be so delicate when you're in there. My message today really is communication. When it comes to the parents, we need to learn, it's like read the room. We need to figure out what's going to be their best way of receiving the message. And when it comes to intactivists, we need to communicate with each other as well a little bit more. If you've got a lot of pain and frustrations that are coming out into your intactivism, there's probably a better space for you to talk with other intactivists and really vent that out. But it should not be on the unsuspecting parent that's vented out. Because ultimately, the point of being an intactivist, in my opinion, is to raise awareness, to spread information. But if nothing's absorbing, then we're just spreading information and nothing's really going in. So it's really critical that you think about the person that you're talking to and how are they going to best receive the message. So my recommendation to intactivists would be, they say anything you want to get good at, go read a book by someone who's already very successful at it. I would recommend that intactivists just do a little bit more personal research on the right ways to communicate with people to make sure that your message is going to be received, because we are in a position of responsibility with the information that we have, and the fact that we already have the advantage that we've already made it over that hardest part that makes it really hard to receive the message. Because if you candy coat this thing, it's still a hard pill to go down. Even if you're giving it as gently and as kindly and as empathetically as possible, it's a very hard pill to swallow to ask someone to accept that genital mutilation was done unto them or unto their child. So that's why, in the sales and business world, you have to be careful about not using certain trigger words that will throw off your customer. So if you think about all the communication that we're doing, we're really are marketing for the cause. So you wouldn't want to put an ad out there that just made everyone who watched it want to turn the TV off. Not if your real mission is to get the message out and have it be received. So that's why I'm here. I know for a fact I would have made a different decision for my son and my family if there had been communication. And by that, I mean my doctor definitely did not give me the information. I don't think, had it. And I do think she has a responsibility. She should have had it, but I should have had it too. So I think it's not so much about who we blame. It's about people being able to, for themselves, accept their own responsibility in it. So rather than me running around pointing fingers about whose fault it is, I'm more concerned about the fact that I feel like I now have a responsibility to get this information out to people and to help other moms and families before tragedy strikes, because I have information that they don't have. And my story would have been different if someone had been able to reach me and get the information to me in a way that I was able to absorb beforehand. So that's why I became an intactivist about 14 years ago. That's just a little after my first son was born. I have 3 intact sons since then. They've never had any issues whatsoever. All 4 of my boys have no problems with each other at all. My oldest forgives me, and he understands that I made a decision based on very limited information. And I think that me being an intactivist now, I know it's helping me cope, but I think for him also, he's been able to see me fight for something, and he knows that he's the reason that it is so important to me. So I think that that can help regret parents and other intactivists also on their healing journeys. Sharing now with compassion what we know, because really it's with compassion that we're going to bring a new world of no longer doing this. Like if we're just talk about it, let's take the taboo away. Let's make sure we're being respectful with each other as we communicate so that the message can be received. And I think from there, we'll make some ground. Like every person lost is maybe a baby lost, and that's those are some pretty high stakes to be playing with.
How would you tell parents to respond who are being pressured by doctors to circumcise their sons?
So I get phone calls from friends sometimes or different people. They're saying, "Oh my gosh, so and so's having a baby. I don't know what to do. I was trying to tell them the stuff you taught me, but I couldn't remember it all." That's partly why I wrote my book. Is I wanted there to be a quick, easy reference for parents. The most important thing should be on the top of their mind, and then they should be easy to reference to. And that is kind of how I broke down my book. The most common things that come up, including what the doctors will say, or the pressure that you get. If you are familiar with the fact that the argument that STDs and HIV rates are actually not lower in America, even though we have higher cutting rates, you're not going to be as hoodwinked by the doctor when they try to say, now, they give you that statistic. So I think being prepared, if you can, I know that not everyone has this, being prepared before you go into that hospital setting, knowing the things that are most likely to come up and having your rebuttal ready, that's a great idea, which is why I really think every parent should have a copy, or not of this, anything that just has a list of the things that you are probably going to come up that you can back yourself up with. Because it is hard, especially you've just had a baby, you've got so many things going on. It's hard to remember all the stuff that you research, especially when you're in that setting of, I just had a baby, I'm feeling so vulnerable, and I want to trust these people that are taking care of me. So I would say before you go into that setting, if you are able to, the same way you go in with a birth plan, not everybody does, but have an idea, have an outline of what you want. Like if you don't want your kid cut because you don't want them to go through the pain, write that down. If you don't believe that there's benefits for it, write that down. If you heard this or that and that you think is a good enough reason, write that down, because you might not remember in the moment when they're talking to you. So just like this interview, I thought about these things beforehand. I try to have them fresh on my mind so that when they came up, I could answer them. Now that's it. It's unfortunately a completely different story when it comes to if nobody's ever heard about it before, and they're literally having the doctors and nurses come at them with this information for the first time. And they're like, wait, what? I need to do that? Or my son's going to get bullied, or my son's not going to fit in. I don't want that. I don't want my son to. So if you're able to, and this is why communication is so important, go into it already with as much of the information fresh on your mind, but do yourself a favor. Have a little note card with the things on it that are like, your Spitfire go-to things, so that you're not in that moment not remembering what to do or what to say. So that's where it's really, really helpful to know what the most common myths are, the most common things that you hear going about that your doctor might say, well, you want your son to be cleaner. Well, if you're able to say, well, hey, actually, let me tell you something about that. Turns out that the foreskin is a self-sustaining organ that sort of takes care of itself. And I think if I just leave it there, just it's going to take care of itself just fine. The same way there's a pH balance involved with female genitalia, right? So if you are prepared with what the doctors might come at you with, and you already know what your response is going to be, then there's not that moment of panic. Because in that moment of panic, that's when all the social pressure and brainwashing comes in that tells us, trust your doctor, they are God. That's like a brainwashing. Even when you break free of it, it still has an influence on you. So you really want to just kind of have your armor up and be ready if you can. And that's why we got to talk to expectant parents. Even if all I can do is plant the seed and be like, oh, you're having a baby boy. That's so great, man. That topic of circumcision, I tell you, like that's a tough one. They're like, well, what do you mean? And you just kind of start the conversation. And even then you're like, well, yeah, you should just check it out. Like, did you know that there's 16 functions of the foreskin? Yeah, it's totally not useless. It's totally not just a snip. And just throw a few things in there that are likely to be the things that the doctor might use against them. And then that already gives them a little bit of a buffer. But whenever I do have the opportunity to get a copy of my book to them, it's so much easier for them because then they can just open it right up and say, well, this statistic right here, like I wrote the book and I can't tell you right now off the top of my head what the actual statistic is on like HIV in the United States. I just know it's high. But if someone wants the actual one, they can go in here and look it up. And I've tried to make it really easy for parents to just have a quick reference, both for themselves, but also if they're trying to talk to someone else about it. Sometimes people get choked up about this topic and they have a hard time even just repeating the things that they know by heart. So that's why I really tried to compile just kind of in an essay form the top most important things and sort of their rebuttal to them, and to just make it easy for the parents. I just try to go at it that way. Go into it prepared. Don't feel the same thing as a birth plan. Have a list there.
What do you think of the intactivist movement?
Okay, so it's kind of a loaded question because there's so many different ways to look at the question and answer it. And what I mean by that is there's so many different ways that you can be an intactivist. There's so many different ways that you can try to help in the movement. And some of those are more helpful than others. I think that some of what intactivists are doing is kind of doing harm to the movement. And I think that is when communication styles are not really thought about and you're not catering the message to the person and trying to deliver it in a way that they'll receive. There's quite a bit of that turns people away from even looking at the topic because they feel so attacked by it. So that I would say is not even real intactivism. And that might make some people angry because if the purpose of intactivism is to create and generate interest in the people hearing it, and if you're communicating in a way that they don't generate interest, I mean, just look at it like marketing. Is it a very good marketing campaign if you're getting no sales? It's not. If the point is just to go out there and just be angry, I would say that's something else. I would say that's just being out there and that you're angry rather than the idea being that you really want to communicate and get people to hear you. So what I think of the intactivist movement is, I think it is amazing that people are willing to stand up and speak up, not only for their own children, but for other children. And in that way, I think all of it's honorable, it's wonderful, it's great. There's all kinds of ways you can get through to people. Some need more gentle, some need a little bit rougher. I think it's really important to be careful how you deliver that message.
Hey guys, it's me, Pots. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pots e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail Over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pots e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other intactivist content to empower, teach, and update intactivists with very important information, as well as being the voice for the intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
What are some of the things that intactivists are doing that is detrimental to the movement?
I think when you approach the topic from a perspective that is too harsh, it makes something that's already a bit indigestible too hard to swallow. So I think sometimes many activists, they come at it from such an aggressive standpoint, either in the memes that they're using, sometimes the signs, or even just the verbiage that they're using. The word offensive is interesting in this because the whole scenario is offensive. The thought of mutilating children is pretty offensive. So it's hard to say, like, we need to talk about this offensive thing not offensively, but realistically, since the nature of it already is so difficult and painful, it really does matter, kind of like in art, how we craft the message so that people will hear it. So I think that sometimes what intactivists do that harms the movement is when they are communicating out of their emotions of anger or judgment, or even just it being too abrasive of a message. I think that's going to lose too many parents. Even if you can decode it, it's really hard to get somebody to see that a choice that they made did such a great harm to their child. So it's already hard to get them to see that. So if you're coming at it from a perspective that is just impossible to take, like you're blaming the parents without giving enough consideration to the fact that they probably made the best decision that they could with what they had. And also, if the meme is too extreme, people are going to not look at it. If the words you're using are too extreme, sometimes calling it genital mutilation is even a bit of a trigger word, even though that is what it is. In sales and marketing, you have to be careful about what terms you use, because you have to know that your audience has certain connotations already in their mind. So it's wise to get smart about the meaning that's packed behind a word and an image. And the way to look at it is, if you were not already in this movement and you were to see some of this content that's floating out there, or even some of these protests or some of the signs, how does it make you feel when you see it? Does it shock you so much that you want to go straight into cognitive dissonance? You just immediately want to reject the message. You literally want to turn and go the other way. If it's doing that, let me ask you, is that really the impact you're trying to have? Is it just about shocking people? Is it just about rattling people, but not being there to then follow through on a message and deliver something that can actually be received for the purpose of educating and changing mindset so that we can change the way things are done in the world? So if that's the ultimate goal of intactivism, I think that some of the materials that are available and some of the methods can be counterproductive, because if they're creating a feeling of unease before you've even been able to talk to them about it, they're probably not going to be that open to listening, and they might not even be willing to try. So I definitely think that gentle intactivism has its place, because if we were just comparing two different marketing campaigns, which one planted more seeds that actually grew into something, and which one just sort of blasted their hose all over and didn't really sink in because it wasn't a message that could be received? So I definitely think it matters to be careful and cautious and compassionate when it comes to how you deliver the message. Because if you don't do it right, you might have been the only chance that person had at taking a new perspective. And that's a risky place to be, considering that it could be a child's life on the line, or it could be that a parent is having to accept that they already put their child's life on the line. That's a really hard thing to say. You don't just say, hey, this choice you made, you could have gotten your kid killed. They're going to turn and run for the hills. Versus you're catering to the parts of the parent that really wanted what was best for their child. It's like, man, I can see that you really wanted what was best for your child and this and that. And then they find out 100 babies die in the United States every year. The parent themselves makes the connection that, oh my God, I made a choice that could have been my kid. My kid could have been that statistic. They make that connection on their own. but they're probably not going to make that connection. They're going to choose not to if you're just coming right at them and saying, you risked your baby's life. You almost got your kid killed. Because that's obviously not what they were trying to do. They didn't go into their doctor and say, hey, I'm going to give you this money and I want you to destroy my child's life. You know, no one's thinking that. So if you're coming at them from that, they're not going to receive the message. And I just urge intactivists to remember that the whole point of intactivism is that the message be received by the person hearing it so that it can go into the mind and the mind can be changed. If it's not going in, you're not doing anything. Or literally, they're not even looking at it because it's too painful. That's why I say all the time, this needs to be candy coated. I don't know how we can candy coat all of it, but some of the hard truths, they are going to find out on their own as long as you take that fragile first vulnerable moment and create curiosity in them. That sells. What are you doing if you're not creating their desire to have more information? So make sure that whatever you're using in your intactivism is gentle enough that they're willing to touch it. If it's a hot potato, they're not going to grab onto it. They're not even going to catch it. Little gentle intactivist things I use that are helpful. I think you can get these on drmama.org. These little teeny cards, okay? Look at that gentle, loving image there. And it's just got some really great facts. Not a single one of these facts says you did a really shitty thing to your kid and you should suffer. None of it says that. It literally just gives a lot of information that they probably never heard before. You know what it does? It creates curiosity. Then they're going to want to go Google this stuff and they're going to want to find out more. And all I did was plant the seed and walk away. So maybe they have a child already and you know they've probably already cut one of their sons. Then use this guy. This one says, hey, parents are waking up. Parents are raising both intact and cut sons now. Like, this is a thing. You don't have to make one decision once and stick with it. It's okay to be brave and make a different choice. And you know what? That, I think, is going to get to a lot more parents than trying to talk to a mom who has already had her kid circumcised, who has obviously already chosen the side of cognitive dissonance and disassociating from reality to deal with it. You're not going to get through with anything else. Like, it needs to be like, oh, well, I didn't know that there was 16 functions to the foreskin. Well, out of curiosity, I want to kind of find that out. Then you find out what those functions are. And on your own, you make the connection that obviously, if that's what the benefit was, you remove that benefit. They can come up with that on their own, but they're not going to make those neural networks if you're coming at them like they're too stupid to think of it on their own. Just create curiosity in a way that they'll receive it. So I would discourage intactivists from using words and ideas that automatically set the parents to a defense. So now you've challenged their love for their child instead of using their love for their child. They love their child. That's why they decided what they did. Go around, man. Through the, like, just beat around that, pull that out and say, I know you're a good parent. Look at this. You literally were willing to go through this traumatic thing for you and your child because you believed it was best. I believe that same part of you that wants what's best for your child could look at this other information and just consider a different way. But they're not going to do that if what you're trying to convince them is that they're monsters. And honestly, even when it's intactivists commenting, so many of their comments are so antagonizing, negative. I feel sick for the parents reading it. And I do have the advantage of, I remember being so naive on one side. I made the wrong decision. I remember the pain, and literally I went through suicidal times because I felt so guilty about what I had done and so threatened as a mother. It shattered my reality to have that happen. Everything I thought was safe was no longer safe anymore. Somebody has to be brave to step out of what they believed was their paradigm, what they thought reality was. You're asking them to consider that everything they ever were taught might be a lie. If anything was a red pill, this is it. If anything's going to make you question the medical industry, pediatrics, AARP, if anything's going to make you question that, how is it not this? right? So I don't think we need to come at this from attacking parents' perspective. In a way, I've seen so many videos of actual doctors that were so brainwashed that they believed with all their heart that they were doing the right thing. I think even they need to be talked to in a way to help them realize, look, for those guys, they have to suddenly look back and think the 2000 circumcisions that I did in the past, I wasn't helping. I was harming. I was a monster that took a knife to all of these children. That's what you're asking the doctors to grasp. So, I mean, when you're the one with the knife in your hand, you kind of need to hear it like, put the knife down then. If it's too hard to even hear that, put the knife down. So, when it's a doctor, that's one thing, but because you expect a little bit more from them, you expect them to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more educated. Sadly, in our day and age, parents are literally just taught to trust their doctor. Now, unless they're thinking outside of the box, which sadly so many of them are not. I remember being so naive that I literally believed that trusting what my doctor said was doing the best thing I could. And it took this experience to rip that reality away. I literally will not go to a doctor unless I'm like hardcore sure all I need is an antibiotic, or my kid broke his leg, you can set it, but I'm gonna watch you every damn second. You know what I mean? So I mean, especially the people who are still taking so much comfort in the idea that their doctor is their number one fan and just taking care of them, that they can do no wrong. It's really hard to ask them to now all of a sudden think for themselves. Just take it on all on your own, right? Because if your doctor's wrong, they feel so underqualified. If even my doctor was wrong, who am I? Right? So what really matters is to connect with the parents or the doctors on, look, I believe you're a good person. Some of them aren't. Okay, you know there's some scumbags. I'm talking about the ones that you're like, I think you're a good person and you're just misinformed. Right? I think pointing the finger and calling everybody a monster is just going to make a whole bunch of people point the finger back and not want to talk. So if the content that you're using, if the message that you're bringing is just trying to shame them into accepting it, all you're doing is, in my opinion, you're just cathartically replaying your own trauma. Like, you're not really helping heal the world if all you're doing is spreading anger that makes people less willing to look at what caused the anger. So I caution you to be careful. Make sure you're intactivisting out of empathy and really a desire to help save future children. Because the minute you forget about that kid that might get laid on the table is the minute you start being mad at that random stranger and just wanting to win the damn argument. Did you win the argument? If they're going to go home, cry to their husband that these horrible people online said terrible things to me, and now I feel terrible, but I also I don't want to think about it or talk about it ever again. You make the decision. This was too much for me. And then the baby gets cut. I don't know, pin a rose on your nose. Did you just want to win the argument, or did you want to make a difference? So be careful what you're using as methods, because some of that shit it's not going to stink. It's not going to stay. All it's doing is throwing rocks. Don't throw stones, guys. If your content is stones, put it down. You need to be reaching to the heart of the person, not like, don't poke them in the wound. Let's put it that way. Don't poke them in the wound. Like, wrap your arms around them and embrace and acknowledge that they were trying to do the right thing for their child, and then create curiosity that makes them on their own want to follow the breadcrumbs in. If they're willing to look, then the research is easy. The research is easy once you're not approaching it with a research or a biased research, right? You're going into it to prove the circumcision is good. You'll find everything you want on Google, but they're never going to look at our side of the argument that's trying to convince them that they were the monster. That's my opinion. I think I'm one of the, I don't want to say lucky few, but I'm one of the rarer ones that was able to witness what I saw and sit in the darkness of it and I was able to crawl my way out. And now I want to make a difference in the world. And making a difference and saving a baby is more important to me than whether or not some person on the internet thinks I'm smart or dumb, or whether or not I expressed how angry I am at circumcision. Like, that's fine. But if I'm not helping anyone, am I an intactivist or am I just a rantivist? You know? So be careful what content you use for sure. It's going to make all the difference in whether or not you're actually making a difference or whether or not you're just shaming parents and guaranteeing that they're never going to look at the topic ever again. Are you approachable? Is it approachable? It's not really. So we really ought to be candy coating it as much as we can, because once they get past that candy coating, the bitter middle is just shit. It's not good. So no one's going to swallow it if it tastes like shit when it first gets on their tongue, right? That's what I think.
Okay, that was Melina part 1. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I'm going to put all of her links down in the description. Make sure you check that out. Also, subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of her interview and our other intactivist content that we release every single week. Please share and like this video to get this out to more people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye!